Welcome. This is Leah Bales with the Becoming More Show. Today, we're talking about big heart listening, listening beyond opinions, emotions, ideas, or being right. So, big heart listening is a term I've started using fairly recently for a practice that I use myself in certain times and that I've been teaching to clients. Years ago, when I was practicing a therapist, practicing at Heartspring Wellness Center, the other therapist that I had who was right beside me in her office had a sign up in the hall that said, "What most people really need is a good listening to." You probably heard the expression. What she really needs is a good talking to. What most people really need is a good listening to. Most people I know are hungry to be really heard. And so when we can give someone the gift of deeply listening, of allowing them to be deeply heard, it can be transformational for that other person, healing for that other person, and for us. And yet, most of what we're taught about listening doesn't allow us to really listen as fully as we can. One of my clients recently that I worked with sent me a note afterwards, and she wrote, "This is a game changer. Actually, it is a life changer. In just 2 weeks, this has made a huge difference in my marriage. My husband is confiding again about what really matters to him. We're feeling really close and really happy again. I've been telling friends about big heart listening, and I know I will use it my whole life." In her situation, she has a really happy marriage, she has a wonderful life, but there was a lot coming up for her husband. He had lost a friend and lost a relative, and there was a lot of grieving. So big heart listening is wonderful in this situation where there are a lot of emotions. And so when she was able to use what I'm going to teach you, big heart listening, it absolutely shifted for him and allowed him to find the healing in himself and to feel deeply, deeply heard by her, so that all the emotions that were confusing to him and to her were not so confusing anymore. So we're going to talk about what is big heart listening, and when to use it. And we're going to talk about when not to use it, because it's not something you would use all the time. We'll talk about when not to use it. And I'm going to teach you a 6-step process, but they are tiny steps. They're steps that work really well together. So it's not like you've got to have this memory of things to do. And the first 5 steps are what I call embodied listening. And the 6th step is what takes it into big heart listening. And that's really, that 6th step is like a magical tool that will help you open truly to a different dimension of listening. So big heart listening is great for times when there are big emotions, like in the situation with my client. Another client used it recently who had a situation in a family, which a lot of us are having right now, of being really different politically. And so then he and his relative would have a conversation, and it would escalate into this like battle of opinions. And my client said he felt really bad because he loved this family member, and they were just in such different places that it was really hard to listen. So in both of these situations, with my client whose husband was having a lot of emotions and grieving, and in the situation with the client who had a family member that with a lot of disagreement, both of them realized they were trying to fix the other person. My client with her husband was trying to fix his emotions. "I don't know what to do to fix it," she would think. "I don't know what to say back to him to fix it." The key was she didn't need to fix it. So big heart listening is great to use when you have that feeling of, "Oh, I need to fix this and I don't know what to do." It's not your job to fix. In the case of big emotions, it's your job to hold space so the other person can really feel heard. It's your job to give that big, big heart listening, that great listening to that everyone really needs. And in the other situation, my client who was had a family member with a really different political position. My client realized he wanted to change the other person's mind. And he realized that wasn't going to happen. And no matter what he said, no matter how much they went back and forth, that wasn't going to happen. And it was just frustrating. And it was getting in the way of their true heartfelt connection that is very real. So being able to step into big heart listening allowed space so they didn't get caught so much in the content and the disagreement. I often find myself using big heart listening when I need a do-over for listening, when I haven't listened very well. Like my husband, you know, if he has a lot of emotion about something that triggers me and I get reactive and I realize, wow, I did not listen very well and it didn't help the situation very much. So I don't say to him, I want to do big heart listening, but I make these shifts, these 6 steps. I'll give you in a little bit. And I will say to him something like, realize I didn't listen very well. I'd like to listen better. Can I have a do-over? And then I use these 6 steps to really listen more deeply. When someone really needs to be heard, if you realize you haven't heard very well, often, like that saying in the therapy hall, it was, what most people really need is a good listening to. People don't need to be fixed. They don't need us to do it for them. They don't need us to convince them or tell them what's right. We need to create space for someone to be really heard. And then often that person makes a shift. So this is like often a first step, but sometimes it completely takes care of a problem just by listening. This is not, big heart listening is probably not the listening you're going to do all the time. It's not the listening when you have an interactive conversation, because in this, you are just really going to listen and hold space for the other person to be heard. So it's not that give and take. That's a different kind of listening. That's important too. It's not even the reflective listening. Oh, I'm hearing you say blank. Is that right? It's even different than that. And we'll talk about why. It's not to manipulate or to fix the other person. And it's not to use if the other person may potentially be violent. So I just want to have that as a really important thing. You don't want to create this big heart listening if you or your children or your pets or someone vulnerable would be in danger, of course. Then that sometimes those big emotions that could turn violent, this is not something you want to use for that. And again, I would say sometimes there are people who have such different positions. Maybe they're being racist or there's something that's truly offensive. I might choose not to use big heart listening. I might choose to say, I'm finding this really offensive. I need to leave. So you definitely set limits and not use it for those times. So let's dive in a little more to what it is. Imagine a situation where maybe like me, you haven't listened as well. Most of us think we're really good listeners. A lot of people say to me, people like me who have a background in psychology or communications, like I have a degree in psychology, I have a degree in communication, I know how to communicate. Most of us don't listen very well. And I think all of us can learn to listen better. So this is a way to learn to listen better. Learning it, you may not do all 6 of the steps every single time, but if you practice this, you will use parts of it all the time in your listening, and your listening will get better. Again, what most people really need is a good listening to. What we often give is a lot more talking than listening. So the 6 steps, and the first 5 are what I call embodied listening, listening more deeply and fully, not just with your head, but with your body and your heart and being present. The very first step is to be quiet. That's sometimes hard. Stop talking. To listen, you stop talking. You close your mouth, you open your ears. And if that impulse to talk comes up during this big heart listening process, you just set it aside. And you may say to yourself, oh, I'm here to hold the space for deep listening. I'm here to hold the space for this person to be fully heard. Now, if you've worked with me or you know me, I hope you know that I'm a big believer in your voice, in bringing your voice out and knowing your truth and bringing it forward. This is not about that. This is about giving space for someone else to be heard. It's another talk, it's another conversation. Happy to help you with how do we find the balance for that. This is not even balanced. In the situation with my client whose husband had so many emotions he couldn't even talk about them, she needed to just create space for him to talk and talk and talk and talk. And all I suggested she say during that is, thank you. Is there more? Thank you. Is there more you want to say? Then we talked later about how she could bring her perspective. And actually, it was very easy after she gave him that space. So number one is just be quiet. Close your mouth, open your ears. Number two is to breathe. So often when we're listening, especially in these situations with big emotion, lots going on, we have lots of feeling, the person has a lot of feeling, we cut off our breath because we get scared. When you breathe, you bring yourself into your body. You're always breathing, but you let yourself feel the breath. Number two is feel your whole body. So you breathe. Oh yeah, I'm not going to hold my breath while this person's talking. I'm going to breathe. Just breathing creates a space that allows that person to speak and be heard. Feel your body. Number three. Get grounded. Now, this will help you, especially if it's kind of feels unsafe. Maybe someone's talking about political stuff. You can feel yourself getting aroused, or it's emotions, or there's an opinion that you want to give back your thoughts. You want to feel safe. Get grounded. Feel your heels. Feel your feet. If you're sitting, feel your hips on the chair. Get grounded down into your belly and your pelvis and your legs and your feet into the earth. Number one. Stop talking. Number two, breathe. Number three, feel your whole body. Number four, get grounded. And number five, release tension. Whatever tension there is, just feel it draining away. Now, this is really different than that leaning forward, being in your head, thinking about what they're saying, or even some people take notes. Some couple recently that I was working with, she liked to take notes when he was talking. He didn't like it. So we have to, that tends to keep us in our heads. Different people have to work it out differently. But for this, you want to be, not talking. You want to be breathing. You want to be feeling in your body, grounded, and let tension release through you. Because then you're really present and you're energetically creating a space where that other person is not having the resistance from you. That other person has space and the thoughts can come, the feelings can come and move through. These first 5 steps are great for listening anytime, even if you're going to respond later. They're great for that. The next part, number 6, this is the magic wand. This is what expands it into a different dimension. You expand into the big heart. Stop talking. You're breathing. You're feeling. You're grounded. You're letting tension flow out. And then you let your heart open into the big heart. However you like to think of this. Some people think of it as we're sort of in a quantum physics way. We could think of a local self and big self. Local heart, our own heart, and the non-local, the expanded heart. We're thinking of it in a spiritual way. We might think of it as the great heart, God's heart, that bigger heart that is there to support you and the person you're listening to. So you can feel these physical shifts when you say to yourself, I'm not talking now, I'm listening. You close your mouth. When you breathe, when you feel, when you're in your body, you listen better. And then when you take it to opening to the big heart, whatever your faith system, your belief system, you can physically feel the shift. You've dropped into your body, you're relaxed, you're releasing, you're feeling, and you open to the support. For me, it's like opening behind me into the support of a great warmth and benevolent energy and love and spaciousness and kindness. It supports me and it supports this one who's speaking. You can physically feel that shift to grow out beyond you. You are both being held and opened and listened to and supported by the big heart. It's always there available for you. And in this place, you are listening almost as a channel for the soul place, for the spirit place to be available. It is profound. It's very simple, just a simple shift. Shift from speaking to listening. Shift into your body, feel it fully, get grounded, let tension release, and know you can open to the great heart, the big heart. And that all-loving, all-encompassing, supportive big heart, you will hear differently, and the person will feel the energetic shift and be able to speak truth, be able to sort through things, be able to have spaciousness to find his or her or their truth right then. Imagine that for yourself. Imagine a situation, maybe you've listened and it hasn't been very successful, or maybe you've been really frustrated with someone, and you don't have to take your very most frustrating one to start with, but imagine a time for you recently, or maybe something that's coming up when you could use this. And just imagine yourself saying to yourself, I am going to use big heart listening. I'm not going to try to fix this person or convince them or change them. I'm going to play with, I'm going to experiment with big heart listening. I'm not going to need to give my opinion now. I'll find a time for it later if that's appropriate. Maybe it won't even be needed. Often the other person will make such a big shift that you will take it somewhere different later. But for now, I'm playing with, experimenting with big heart listening. I'm just listening. I'm feeling my breath. I'm feeling my whole body. I'm grounding into the earth to be safe. I'm letting tension move through, and I'm opening to the support, the presence, the benevolence, the kindness, the love of the big heart, that non-local heart, our little self and the big self we can open into. And just imagine how that might feel for you. I really invite you to play with this. Now, if you have questions, if you're like, but what about this? Or what about this? Or how do I work with this? I'd love to help you adapt it. With my client a few weeks ago, both my clients in the last few weeks, we role played it a little bit first. We played it out. Be happy to do that with you. And also, if you're concerned about, well, how does this fit in with my bringing my voice forward? I'm happy to play with that with you because it's individually adapted. And I believe that just having this tool, having that sense of embodied listening, opening to the bigger spaciousness, the bigger heart, will be transformational for you if you play with it, if you experiment with it. Give it a try. I'd love to hear what you think, how it works, how it goes, and very happy to answer any questions. Thanks so much for being here. Big heart, breath for you and for everyone you're in touch with. Bye-bye.